Hi there, I'm Scott Lowe with ActualTech Media, and thank you for joining us for our very first Briefing Breakdown. Briefing Breakdown is a new video segment that we're launched here at ActualTech Media, where we talk to our favorite vendors on the planet about what they're doing, and we bring that to you in what we think is a pretty unique format. And we're joined today by HYCU. I'd like to ask our two guests to introduce themselves before we continue. Can you do that?
Absolutely.
Simon?
I'm Simon Taylor, CEO of HYCU. Great to see you all.
Subbiah?
Hi, this is Subbiah Sundaram, VP of Products and Marketing at HYCU.
So essentially what we've done is we have received a brief video briefing from HYCU, and we're going to watch that together. And along the way, James and I are going to ask questions of our guests here from HYCU about what we're watching and try to provide some additional context about what you're seeing to help you better understand what HYCU is doing, the announcements they're making, and how they're helping serve customers. So James, do you want to get it kicked off?
Let's do it. Here we go.
I'm Simon Taylor, CEO of HYCU. HYCU is a multi-cloud data protection as a service business, and we've been around for about 3 years. In that time, we've gone from 0 to 1,300 customers and are now sold in about 70 countries around the world. People often ask us, how did you grow so fast? How did you scale so quickly and without any outside funding? And I'll tell you from our perspective, it's really about how we actually service our customers and how we make sure that we are actually providing true value in a multi-cloud world. So what do I mean by that? If you think about data protection and that marketplace in general, historically, backup companies have been great at one type of environment and not as great at everything else. So if we think about Unix, there was a company backing that up, and Windows, there's a company backing that up, and VMware, there's someone for that. But what do you do in a multi-cloud world? What do you do when you've got multiple different clouds, both on-prem and off-prem, that are required by the company? How do you create the level of integration so that it's going to support each of those clouds, each of those platforms, as well as the previous one? So that's what HYCU set out to do. When we started the company, we became the world's first purpose-built backup and recovery service for Nutanix. Became very well known for that and grew very, very fast. And the secret to that success.
So Simon, I want to piggyback on what you just said just for a second. Part one is you started off sort of different than a lot of other data protection companies in the market by really focusing on a niche workload use case to start Nutanix, correct?
Correct, yes.
And so we're going to talk about this later, but over time you've been expanding that. But what made it so unique was the deployment methodology for one. I mean, when you deploy HYCU, it's not going to your on-premises environment and having to do a whole bunch of deployments and agents and new servers and things like that. It's a push-button deployment.
That's right, Scott.
Can you talk
absolutely right. I mean,
I think about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, when we started out, first of all, we were looking for the new paradigm shifts in the marketplace. I mean, let's face it, people do not buy backup because something prettier has come along, right? So they're not just buying the newest thing. Backup is an incredibly sticky space. So there's really two times that people buy new backup. One is when what they're using today is broken. And two is when there's a massive paradigm shift in the industry that fundamentally requires new underlying technology. The first place that we really saw that was with Nutanix and hyper-converged, and we said, my goodness, this is something different. This conversion of three-tier architecture into one box, this is going to fundamentally reshape the industry. The second place that we saw that, of course, was cloud. And I think what we recognized very early on was the need to build purpose-built solutions. So rather than trying to build one box out of the gate, then deploy agents and run wires and duct tape it together to try to make it work for everything, we sort of said, if it's purpose-built, if it's custom designed for the platform it supports, you're going to go deeper, you're going to get faster recovery times, it'll be easier to deploy, and it's going to be an all-around better solution. That's why everything we build is native and custom. Everything we build is agentless. And that's why I think it's so user-friendly and easy to deploy.
Excellent. James, you want to continue?
Success was that we really natively integrated with the Nutanix platform. Everything from being agentless to natively integrating at the storage snapshot level to supporting each and every single one of applications that were designed by Nutanix and the Nutanix infrastructure. After that, we built our own purpose-built backup and recovery for VMware. And then we launched the world's first backup as a service for Google Cloud. It was natively integrated and is still today offered inside the GCP Marketplace. At that point, HYCU took a step back and we said, we've got these wonderful purpose-built solutions that are servicing the Nutanix market, the VMware market, the GCP market. We added physical environments. So we were really a perfect solution for enterprises. But we said, how can we add value? How can we become the true leader in multi-cloud data protection as a service? And what we realized at that point was that instead of just using these individual purpose-built backup and recovery services, if we could find a way to combine them all under a single pane of glass, we'd be able to actually provide a clear and true control plane with which our customers could support their entire multi-cloud environment. So that's exactly what we did. Last year, we launched our very own platform called HYCU Protégé, which takes all of the data from all of the clouds that we support and consolidates it under a single pane of glass. At that point, we looked at the platform and said, you know what, because we've already got all the data from all these different platforms, we're also going to offer up our very own automated data migration process. We're not just going to move VMs, we're actually going to move full applications and full databases. We're going to provide absolute consistency across all of your data, and it doesn't matter what cloud you're using. We call that entire platform HYCU Protégé. So today what we're going to be talking about is HYCU Protégé and how we've been able to evolve from a purpose-built backup and recovery company supporting Nutanix, the world's leader in hyperconverged, to a true multi-cloud data protection as a service business. With me today is Subbiah Sundaram, our VP of Product, and he's going to be walking through all of the different elements that have helped us to be successful in this industry. And then at the end, we're going to talk a little bit about how that success from a product and customer delight perspective has helped us achieve some major milestones. And not to bury the lead here, I'll say that one of the best aspects of running this business is that we now have a 91 NPS score. We take a lot of pride in that. We've got a large customer success team that supports and focuses on customer success and NPS every single day.
Simon, I think that a lot of people in your position focus on NPS. A lot of customers looking to buy stuff focus on NPS, but from the customer side, they're probably not thinking about it every day. Could you provide just some sort of frame of reference? Like what do people consider a decent NPS score? What's good?
Sure. No, that's a great question. So, NPS score is a really, really effective way of measuring customer satisfaction. It stands for Net Promoter Score, and it really is baked down into one simple question: would you recommend this product or service to a friend or colleague? And in our industry, it really varies. But I would say that the average in this industry at this point is around a 60, around a 65. We sometimes will see some of the larger legacy vendors with much lower than that. Some of the newer vendors, have some in the 70s and maybe the 80s. But I believe at this point, there's only one other vendor in infrastructure and storage at all that has a 90, and that's Nutanix. And I think you could say we certainly took a page out of their book in sort of crafting a customer success story and building a team around this so that it really is an audited part of the metrics that we provide to our investors and that we really take seriously as a business.
Okay, I just wanted to provide some context for how good a 91 really is.
Was that clear?
Yeah, absolutely. Scott, did you have a question before we go on?
I did. I mean, this is probably something that's going to be gotten into, but to help people understand sort of as a baseline, where does HYCU run? Is this an on-premises deployment? Is this a cloud deployment? Where does it actually operate, and how do I actually deploy it?
It's a great question. And in fact, this is one of the beautiful parts about HYCU. I sometimes joke that it's almost like we're a piano salesman because we have individual keys and then we have HYCU Protégé, which wraps it all together, right? And so if you buy, let's say that you're running a multi-cloud environment and you've got Nutanix on-prem, VMware on-prem, and you're running both Azure and GCP in the cloud. You will actually, depending on where you want to store your data, you'll turn on purpose-built services in each one of those locations. So if you're a GCP person or you're an Azure person, you'll go to the Azure Marketplace, you'll turn it on. And it's literally in the cloud, a cloud marketplace service, true service. If you're running Nutanix on-prem, you're going to deploy it on-prem, and it's going to natively integrate at the storage snapshot level within Nutanix itself. And if it's VMware, it's done through the VADP integration. So no matter what it is that you are backing up, because it's purpose-built services, they're natively tied to each one of those platforms. And then Protégé is very simply just a overlay that collects all that data in one place and presents it to you so you can auto-migrate as well as do disaster recovery.
Is this managed via Protégé as well, or do I manage it in each of those individual locations?
You can do both. So Protégé itself is one of our most exciting releases. And the fact that you now have a single pane of glass that ties all this data together, you can imagine then that one of the big investments we're making from an R&D perspective is to continue to build that out. So in subsequent releases, you're going to go beyond just the management. You're going to be actually doing the orchestration, every other aspect of data protection as well. Subbiah, do you want to add to that?
Absolutely, Simon. I think the big thing, which, as you clearly point out, we want to make sure where do the customers spend 90% of the time they spend in the platform they are managing. So we wanted to make sure that is most accessible there for them. And we have this HYCU Protégé, as Simon said, which gives them a compliance view across the board, as well as allows them to get a holistic picture of what to do, and when to act on.
Okay.
All right. Do you want to continue?
Let's keep going.
And I'll tell you, I could not be prouder as CEO of this business to be running an organization that is actually providing value to customers. That's not just out to make a buck, that is actually driving value in what I believe is one of the most innovative spaces in the world, multi-cloud. So here you see a diagram, and I think this is a great articulation of what I was just talking about when we discussed HYCU Protégé. You can see these almost keys on a keyboard. You've got the Nutanix backup service, the VMware backup service, GCP backup service. Now we've added Azure backup as well. These are purpose-built, lightweight services that you can turn on in a moment's notice. There's no professional services required. Everything we've built is natively integrated into the platform it supports. That means when you go to our Nutanix service to do backup, you are getting a different experience than with VMware and with GCP and with Azure, because the language that we use, the support that we provide for the data sets, applications, and workloads is based on what you need as a platform user. So if you're using GCP and you care about certain elements of GCP, you can be sure that our backup's going to support it. Same with Nutanix, same with VMware, same with Azure, et cetera, et cetera. So if you think about these as the individual piano keys on a piano, we've almost taken these keys and inserted them into our own platform, HYCU Protégé. And I like to joke, we make beautiful music with it. Because when you take these purpose-built backup and recovery services and you put them into a control plane, and they're all independently built. You're not starting off with a big box and then trying to run wires and deploy agents and make it look like cloud. These are purpose-built services that you can deploy right from the marketplaces of your favorite platform vendors. So we take those services and all the data gets consolidated inside HYCU Protégé, and that's going to be the platform that's going to let us do the data migration as well as disaster recovery. So as I was saying, I think when we talk about data protection as a service and we talk about multi-cloud, a lot of people say, okay, but I'm not just in the cloud. I'm also on-prem. When we think about multi-cloud, we're really thinking about your data and where it resides. So whether you're on-prem, whether you're journeying to the cloud and you're doing that digital transformation process, or whether you're natively in the cloud, we want to make sure that you get the same level of support. So on-prem and in the cloud, you're going to get native backup and recovery services that support your favorite platform. You're also going to be able to do data mobility to support your journey to the cloud. So if you've got, SQL services, SQL databases, SAP HANA, a whole bunch of data applications and databases all running on-prem, and you want to move them to the cloud, you've got to be concerned about data consistency. You've got to be concerned about the costs involved with data migration. You've got to be concerned about the time that's involved with doing all that process as well. So we said, let's make it easy. One of the core tenets of our business has always been simplicity. So what we did is we actually allow you to automate the journey to cloud. You can literally just...
So when we talk about SQL Server and Exchange, although who runs Exchange anymore, and SharePoint and stuff like that, when you talk about that running in VMs, are you providing application and crash consistent recovery capabilities? How deep are you going? Can you do single item and stuff like single item recovery and things like that? How deep are you getting into the applications, or are you focusing more on the sort of the construct in which the applications live, like VMs and containers and things like that?
Sure. I can actually give you guys a quick insight into it, Scott. What we do is that when we talk about application consistency, we talk about automatic application discovery. Then we automatically, even because we automatically discover, we know exactly what applications are running inside them. So based on that, let's say, for example, it's SQL Server, we use the VDI method. If it's Exchange, we use the VSS, and Oracle, RMAN. So we do use the native application supported methodology and take a backup. That's from a backup perspective. From a recovery perspective, we want to make it extremely simple for the customer. So we do actually support, for example, if you are using a database and you lose, let's say you made a mistake at 3 o'clock, you can go back to exactly 2:59 and recover the data, because we also manage all your transaction logs. That is something we do right from the get-go for the customer. So it's truly application aware and discovery integrated there.
Perfect. Thank you.
Select the applications or databases that you want to move, press a button, and you can move the entire virtual machine running that application or database directly to the cloud. We can spin it up in the cloud, and then once it's there, we can bring it back down on Earth for disaster recovery preparedness as well. So that's how we get to our data protection, our data mobility, and our disaster recovery. And again, I think the key to this is understanding that no matter where you are in your cloud journey, and no matter where your data resides, HYCU's true multi-cloud data protection as a service is definitely going to be able to support you. So hopefully that provides a pretty good sense of.
So when we think about data mobility, are people using HYCU as basically a way to get to the cloud? Are they using it as an interim step while they look at how to move to more native cloud constructs, or how is it being used right now from a long-term perspective? I definitely see the
Sure.
I definitely see the allure, and okay, I can get this from on-premises into the cloud right now very easily. What are people doing long-term?
Yeah, so what we're seeing a lot of times right now is there's just a tremendous amount of old-fashioned scripting going on in the industry. And it's always sort of mind-boggling to us to sort of, we get on calls, and I would say that the industry is a little bit bifurcated when it comes to who is providing services around cloud. There's a lot of DevOps folks who really fundamentally believe that they're just going to need to do scripts. And then there's really the enterprise systems admins who are sort of like, wait a second, I need to automate this. I really need a way. If I'm running, if I'm a cloud service provider and I've got 1,000 customers, I've got to get all of their workloads to cloud fast, and they need to be protected the entire time. The last thing I can afford is to sort of lose a bunch of data en route. So we're certainly seeing that as sort of a category 1 hurricane in terms of need for right now. I think the other thing that is coming up more and more, of course, is the move to containers. The idea of actually migrating not just your legacy databases, but actually being able to turn them into something else along the way. And I can promise you that in the next sort of 3 to 6 months, we're going to have some very, very exciting reveals in our product roadmap that are going to come your way that will be very, very, I think, interesting and on point for that.
As you're shifting those workloads, I assume that there's other teams that are having to jump into action at some point. There's networking changes. Are you just moving the application, or are you helping move some of the infrastructure as well?
So when it comes to migration itself, what we actually do is, as Simon said earlier, we make it application consistent, and we move first the storage and actually spin up the application there. In addition to that, we can also help you with making sure whenever people move their applications, they also have to take care of the networking constructs. That's the big thing. That's the first part. The second thing is that the application running on-prem generally is slightly different than the application running on the cloud, meaning many of the time application, they're developing it on-prem or developing on the cloud and moving it the other way around, right? They want to change the memory, the compute, the networking, things like that. That actually happens. That's also something we can take care of for the customer. And in addition, if customers want to do bulk migration, because a lot of times they want to move a bunch of applications together, that is something we can actually help them do.
And I assume that you have exposed a full API, so this becomes programmable, a programmable service as well. So when you were, Simon, you're talking about this being, handy for DevOps folks. I assume that some of those folks like this because it gives them the ability to sort of bring some of these capabilities into their development pipelines.
That's absolutely right, Scott. I would say this is probably the most effective set of tools for any DevOps group of folks, simply because everything we've done is API driven. We use a standard Swagger set of tools, and literally when CSPs see it, they literally say to me, oh my goodness, I can go in and I can just program this right now. I can integrate it with everything I've already got. This will effectively become a part of our stack tomorrow morning. And you sort of say, yes, and it really is amazing the speed with which they can deploy, and that's great. But it's also about their business evolution. So as their business evolves, you can imagine they're changing a lot of other paradigms within their business, and to be able to go back in and just very quickly add those scripts and have them deploy across all of HYCU, it's a real value add for them.
Excellent. Thank you.
As they're journeying to the cloud, and then when they're in the cloud as well, but seeing is believing. So Subbiah, if I could ask you, could we actually see end to end what this looks like for a HYCU multi-cloud customer? How do they access these services? How do they turn them on? Is it really as easy as we're saying? And can they really support customers on different clouds and each stage of their journey?
Absolutely, Simon. Let's show them the real deal there. Cool. So let's actually start with the overall first picture, right? When a first customer wants to see is that most customers are on multiple clouds. And as we've talked about before, customers are anywhere have between 4 to 6 clouds on an average a customer. In this infrastructure, as you said in HYCU Protégé, we bring multiple clouds together, right? And what you see here in one single pane of glass, the whole infrastructure. And the first thing which we tell the customer is not about the speeds and feeds, because that's not what you care. What you care about is a number of applications, virtual machines, and shares, and are they fully protected? That's what you see in this pane of glass for the customer.
So you said that the speeds and feeds is not really what you care about. I think what you're getting at there is, for a lot of backup tools, the first thing they surface is like your latest job run, and was it successful and was it not successful? And what you're saying is that's important information to have somewhere, but what you really care about is, what is the current state of my workloads? Are they protected or not protected? Am I hearing you right there, Subbiah?
Absolutely, James. I think that's the big thing. I mean, one of the things, first time when we showed the dashboard to one of our partners, he said, man, you guys have killed it. I said, what do you mean? That one dashboard gives me the full picture of what I truly care to my business rather than to what my guys care about. So absolutely.
Yeah, that's really helpful. All right.
So let's actually see what's there. As you can, the example here, we actually have a HYCU cloud, a Google cloud, as well as an on-prem infrastructure from a single pane of glass. So let's actually say, okay, this is the first view. Let's look at a customer journey. 95% of the customers are on on-prem infrastructure today. Let's actually look at one of the simplicity of our solution is that we give them a simple virtual appliance to deploy in an on-prem infrastructure. It becomes a true native service of the platform, be it Nutanix or be it VMware. It becomes a native service. People, when we originally introduced, people thought we were complicated. I said, like, guys, let's show them exactly the number of steps that you got to do. This screen captures the gist of simplicity. When you want to start HYCU, these are the only 5 steps you have to do when you get started. This is the first screen you will see there. So that shows the simplicity. So let's look at it from a customer. As soon as you log in, the first thing you want to do is tell us where is your source, meaning what are the infrastructure do you want us to protect. As you can see in this demo, we actually have a Nutanix AHV infrastructure, ESX, and a regular vCenter. In addition, we can also protect Nutanix files, and we can also protect physical machines, all from a single HYCU infrastructure, right? Single lightweight HYCU infrastructure. This is, again, the reason we are being able to do lightweight, as Simon said earlier, it is because we are a true service of the platform. That's why we leverage the capabilities of the platform. That's something here. So,
Subbiah, I think it's an interesting
I'm sorry. I thought you were talking, Simon.
point. A lot of customers say to us when we first show this to them, wait, so you actually have native born in the cloud services and you have all this for on-prem? And the answer is yes. Again, we started with Nutanix, then we added VMware, then physical, then GCP, then Azure. I mean, one after the other, but I think having the opportunity to provide the same level of customer value on-prem and natively in the cloud is so incredibly important.
Absolutely. So I'll quickly walk through the first thing. As I said, as soon as you give us the source, we discover all the virtual machines, like a good solution. We are, at this point on, we are always in sync with the infrastructure. Anytime you add a machine, you'll automatically come up here. The big challenge which we saw a lot of customers actually have is that they have initially when you have 5 machines, you know exactly what application is running in each one of them. When you have 500 machines, there is no way they got 5,000 machines. There's no way you'll know which machine is running what application. We wanted to eliminate that complexity. That's one of the reasons we have what's called automated application discovery. You can select all of the machines, or you can select one of them. Let's say I'll choose just one of them, and I'll say I'll give it some basic credential. As soon as you apply this credential, a discovery process kicks in, and then it'll go and discover what application is running in this infrastructure. For the purpose of the demo, actually, as you can see, the discovery is an entire lightweight process. In this infrastructure, which we have, I'm just showing you what's available in this infrastructure. This is the same discovery. We have SQL Server, Active Directory, Exchange, SAP HANA, the usual suspects which you would expect from a good enterprise application, right? That's something we have. What is it to backup? All you have to do is select the particular virtual machine or an application. It's exactly the same steps in both cases. Apply the policy, assign it, and now you are done. People say, how is it I'm done? Don't I have to set up the jobs, the retention, all that stuff? He said, all that is encapsulated in the policies. So when we say that...
Go ahead, Scott.
I think that's one of the things that I want to make sure if anybody takes nothing else away here is the policy-driven nature of the tool. I've worked with, I don't even want to think about how many different backup products in my 25-year IT career. And that was sometimes the worst part of it, was having to figure out policies and all that good stuff. I mean, you're basically making that dead simple. And it doesn't matter where it runs. I don't have to figure it out.
Yeah, that's very true, Scott. And I would say a couple of things about that. The first, and Subbiah can pick up after this. The first is the team. The HYCU team has worked on so many different data protection products over the last 25 years, believe it or not. When we assembled them all and we actually started to talk about how we were going to build this, one of the first things we said is, if you could change one thing about this industry, what would it be? And we thought it was, Subbiah and I were laughing, we thought it was a funny response. They said, there's too many knobs. And we said, well, what do you mean by that? And the response was, really what backup admins need, they have service level objectives they've got to hit. There's not a product on the market right now that allows you to just enter those objectives and then, just press a button and say go. We know what those SLOs should look like. Why don't we build that natively into the service? And I think that's been a game changer for us.
So what are the basic elements of a policy or an SLA in HYCU? Like, I mean, if I'm an admin that I want to assign a gold policy, what are the simple knobs I have to adjust?
Subbiah, go right ahead.
Should I go ahead? Okay, thank you. There are 3 things, right? I mean, as you could imagine, a good thing is, the first thing is that how often you want to back up, how long do you have to keep, and how much time do you have to recover? That's a question a lot of people don't ask, because that's a very important thing, right? Because you are committing to a business saying, if something goes wrong, I will get you the data back within a certain period of time. So we ask these 3 simple questions. Sounds like the classic RTO, RPO, and retention. People think we wanted to make it even simple and just tell them in simple English language.
So I think you're going to dig into the policies a little more in the briefing. But before we go on policies more, I want to jump back to one question I had about the application discovery. One of the challenges with doing that is the discovery process is only as good as the library of applications that you understand and can map, right?
Absolutely.
How do you, as a customer, I guess my question is, can I either give the platform a way to discover more applications, or are you as HYCU constantly adding more, or what does that look like as far as the breadth of applications that you can discover?
That's a great question. So I think the way currently we do it is that we keep constantly increasing our application coverage in our library. That's what we have been doing it. But the way the system itself is built to eventually scale so that the customer can add their own custom applications. That's the way it's been designed. What we currently do is we release it ourselves. The way we have also done is that we have worked with a lot of the platform partners to see what are the most popular applications in that thing. And it's excellent that people like Nutanix and Google and Azure have been very forthcoming and giving us a lot more insights into what to support first. And that's what actually we have been doing.
Very cool. Okay.
One of our just to add to that, James, one of our key sort of modes of operation at HYCU has been to follow the platform vendors. So follow the clouds, and you can't go wrong. So as Subbiah was just saying, whether it's Microsoft, whether it's Google, whether it's Nutanix, VMware, we're talking to them to find out what workloads need to be run so that we can actually create those within the application, within the support service.
Yeah, I think you're gonna touch on this later when it comes to security, but one of the really cool things is like you're using what the platform has and is important to the platform rather than trying to recreate it, which is a huge distinction. And I don't want to say too much about that because you're going to talk about it later, but that's an important point you just made.
Thank you, James.
Okay, let's jump back into the briefing.
People think, oh my God, policies are probably complicated. No, actually our policies are extremely simple. So I'll just show you what is it to apply the backup. We showed you what does it to apply. Now let's actually see what is the policy itself. The policy, this is our demo, that's where you see lots of policies. By default, we sell the gold, silver, bronze, and the exclude policy. I'll come back to it. But if you want to ever create your own policy, this is the only screen you actually do, right? It's just one simple screen. And we try to make it as simple as possible and in the language you care about, which is, do you want to back up, how often you want to back up, how much time you have to recover. This is something unique to HYCU because we ask people, in case something goes wrong, you are committing to your business how long you have to actually recover. We are the only product which everything from we know of, which actually has the built-in into the solution. It's at the pre, not as a post function. That's something we ask you ahead of time. And we always make sure the infrastructure is compliant to the business policy you actually set up. And the last thing is retention. And the way we do our backups is extremely efficient. As some people call it, it's like a pinprick, with the sense when we take a backup, the application does not even know what's happening. It's like somebody touched it and walked away. Because anytime when we do the backup, all we do is take an application consistent snapshot and let the application go. All the backup happens as part of the HYCU controller. So it's totally impact-free. And this is one of the things Simon said earlier. It's automatic discovery, automatic application consistency. The customer does not have to do anything special. So I can go on more here, but this is, we are truly leveraging the power of the platform here, leveraging the snapshots. Again, one of the things I want to mention, HYCU has something called a fast restore here. HYCU is the only software which uses snapshots, not just for backup, but also for recovery. Because the key thing we recognize is that 95% of the time, customers' recovery happens for data within the last 72 hours. And that's where we can actually do it much faster than any other vendor can actually do in this case. So that's a quick rundown. But that's from a backup perspective. What you guys as an infrastructure people care about is just not the backup. Backup is a necessary evil. What you care about is the application recoveries and the dynamic migration between clouds. Let me actually show you that. When it comes to recovery, let's take, I have a SQL Server and you have a DBA who comes in and says, oh my God, I deleted something. Can you get me data back? Again, can you get me something back, right? When you want to restore, I'm just doing a SQL Server. You can recover the entire SQL Server, but the number of times you're going to recover the entire SQL Server is very small. You can do that too. But what most of the time happens is somebody deletes it, drops a table space, things like that, and they want to recover a database. So you can choose. You can recover to the same machine, or you can recover to an alternative machine. In this case, most of the time when you don't want to touch the production server. So go to an alternative machine, you select any particular thing and any particular database you want, and choose the timestamp you want, including the exact hour you actually did something wrong. It'll actually get you a full consistent database, including all the logs up to the minute. It'll actually take care of it. That's the thing that's the kind of application integrations built in. And as you can see, it's very intuitive for the user. So that's something we do. So that is what I showed you for application applies to virtual machines. We can do the same thing for Oracle, Exchange, you name it. We can actually show you that.
So Subbiah, that was great. So what you just showed was local recovery, the ability to actually recover the data, because it's not about the backup, of course. It's being able to recover full applications and full databases. I think it'd be great if we could also show how we actually help you to recover from the cloud and actually migrate the data directly to the cloud first so we can get it there.
Absolutely. This is something, as you said, Simon, customers are on a journey constantly and they're looking for what can we actually go from A to B. I could start with an application, or let me actually show you what is it probably one of, when you see that all your machines, you see something called a G here. It says that it is ready for migration or DR into the Google Cloud in this case. If I had Azure, if I had connected to Azure, it will tell you if it's ready for Azure too. It's as straightforward as that we are keeping it ready. Let me just choose that particular machine, and I'll say, I want to spin it up on the cloud. So all you have to do is spin up to the cloud, you give it a name, and you actually choose, say, what do you want to do? So let me actually use the HYCU sandbox. What it's going to do here is that it's going to actually connect to the infrastructure, and it's telling me what are the projects I have access to.
Okay, this might be a very basic question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. And by the way, if you hear sounds, we're having a storm, so that might be something some of you may hear.
It's the cloud.
That's right. It's from the cloud, so I guess that's apropos. So if I'm not using the cloud yet, are you just basically cataloging the native data protection, something from the native data protection tools? Are you copying data somewhere? Where are you holding data for the various services? So if you're not using the cloud, if you're not backing up to the cloud or copying to the cloud or migrating to the cloud yet?
So we actually can actually support a wide variety of targets, as Simon was actually saying earlier. We can actually support any of the classic NFS SMB targets locally or HYCU targets locally, as well as we can support any S3 or S3, AWS S3 or any S3 compliant targets. We can also support Azure and Google, obviously, so we do that. And the thing is, in addition, we also make sure we support Google government clouds, Google and Azure government clouds, and Google and AWS government clouds. That's something we do.
Got it. So essentially, if I'm on premises, I can back up to HYCU NFS or to one of the clouds that are supported by the platform.
SME.
Yes,
Absolutely.
effectively anything and everything at this point, Scott. And I think it's a great point, because a lot of times we talk about the source and we don't necessarily talk about the targets openly, because for us, it was something we did from day one. We always wanted to make sure that people had their choice of where they could actually back up their data to.
Yeah, and, well, the reason I ask is it's an important consideration for people that are planning, DR strategies and other things like it, right? They want to make sure that the data is in multiple locations, which you're already doing, but it helps to be able to move it off premises into the cloud and without having to think about it, which is something you're providing. And I just wanted to make sure that I understood exactly how that worked.
It's the demo environment. We have a limited set of sandbox items so you can play with. And it's there. And what you're seeing here is that it's connecting live with your Google Cloud, and it's actually doing. Let me choose what region I want to do and which zone I want to do within a region. Again, all this is live infrastructure. All I have to do is click spin up, and it'll actually bring up the infrastructure on that particular region and zone. When I show this to people, people think, oh, but how does it actually whole thing happen? The way it actually happens is that Simon mentioned earlier, for every platform, we have the best of breed service built into the platform, right? The on-prem infrastructure and the cloud infrastructure. What happens here is that they talk to each other. The customer doesn't have to do any setup. All they have to have is a service on-prem and on the cloud. The services automatically talk and make this whole orchestration happen for you. That's the beauty of the solution. It completely makes it transparent regarding how that whole thing happens. It'll just say spin up, and now you're done. When I say done, obviously it's going to take time, but as you can see, the process has started, and it's going to take a while because obviously the data has to be there, and you can see it's getting there.
So Subbiah, let's address the elephant in the room for everybody, because we need to make sure this show is interesting for all of the viewers. One of the things I think that is so interesting about this is that a lot of the classic on-prem backup companies say they can now do data migration, and they say they can really handle data in the cloud in much the same way that we are. What do you say to people when that question comes up?
That's a great question. So when people actually think in terms of, oh, the classic on-prem guys, when they do on the cloud, they say, oh yeah, no big deal, we will run on the cloud. What do? Deploy the same on-prem software on the cloud completely manually, and then set up all the infrastructure, individual infrastructures, right? Run all the agents, and then do all the transfer between the infrastructure. That completely breaks the simplicity of cloud, right? And it's so much error prone because there are so many moving parts. Here with HYCU, it's all services, prepackaged services run on the cloud and on-prem, and it's monitored 24/7. And because it's completely there, they talk to each other and make the whole orchestration happen. That's why it's dramatically simple for customers, and they don't have to go through manually setting it up, Simon. And that's the big part, which I think customers, when they see it, they say, wow, they get wowed by the whole simplicity we have delivered.
Pause. Okay, so when I'm backing up to the cloud, am I backing it up to my cloud, or am I backing up to a HYCU cloud, or is it my choice?
So you're backing it up to the cloud itself. So typically what we do, if it's GCP, for example, you can choose a different zone within GCP to back it up there, or you could back it up on any other location, any other cloud that you want to. HYCU does not offer its own HYCU cloud, as it were. The clouds that we're referring to are public clouds as a target.
I guess I understand that. I think I didn't ask the question well at all. I will ask for forgiveness for that. When I am backing up to the cloud, who's incurring the storage costs?
Yeah, great question. So it is the customer who's incurring the storage cost. And basically, when it comes to Google, for example, we're actually attached to the Google bill. So you'll literally just turn on the service. It's a marketplace service. HYCU gets added to it, and it all goes through the Google bill.
Okay, so I basically log into Google, push give me HYCU, and then it just adds it to my bill. I'm all set.
That's it. Easy as that.
Awesome. Thanks.
No problem.
I mean, it's almost an honest service, right? It's an actual service. It's not pretending to be a service. It's not cloud washed. And maybe that's just because we built it so recently. I mean, frankly, companies that have been out there for 10, 15 years, these weren't major paradigms at that point. And that paradigm shift has now led to multi-cloud, and here we are. So when we were architecting this, we could really architect something that was designed to be purpose-built for each of those individual clouds, native, to the platform, deployed or turned on really through the marketplace. Those are just things you don't really find out there very much in the rest of the industry.
So I don't want to belabor the point, but when you talk about being built sort of in this era, and the alternate is you can deploy a piece of software that was maybe initially built anyway in a different era, but you just, go deploy that same thing in the cloud. Okay, I've done that, and I guess you could technically get it done, but there's even more problems. For example, if you just build it the same way and you do retention the same way, you could wind up with the most outrageous cloud bill because you use some mechanisms that would not have caused you any problem on-prem probably, but you should have been thinking in a more cloudy way, and because you're using some, I don't want to be insulting, but legacy software, you did something in a not very cloudy way, and it can get really out of control. So I imagine, and this is the reason I bring this up, I wanted to ask about this, are you doing anything from an architecture standpoint that you could speak to that's much more cloudy because you don't have the baggage of having built this 15 years ago?
Absolutely, James. I would start by just saying, I'll pass it to Subbiah, but I would say immediately right off the cup, we are one of the only vendors in the world where you can go to a marketplace and turn on a service. Just the simplicity of doing that to start is huge. The fact that this is legitimately, as I was saying in the program before, this is not something that you deploy. This is not something that you have to set up for. You're literally just consuming it. And I think one of the keys to that is the elasticity. So one of the major reasons, as we all know, that people go to cloud is that they scale up and they scale down. Well, if you've got backup that is static, you are wildly overpaying at times for your backup, right? Or it's just not working and you're out of capacity and then you have to buy more. With this service, because it's purely consumption driven, as you start to need more storage, let's say that you're going through some event within your company and you've got a lot of data running through Google, it's going to go up. And then your backup's going to go down, in proximity with the underlying data. And I think that is one of the real architectural values and economic value drivers for our customer base. But Subbiah, why don't you add to that?
Absolutely. So one is the big part is the elasticity. The second one is also we try to take advantage of what's the built-in platform functionality like snapshots, clones, replicas. That is something we do. And the third big thing I would say is the integration into security. A big thing customers worry about when you go to the cloud is the data security, right? They're paranoid about it. And HYCU being natively integrated into the native identity management and things like Google IAM or Azure Active Directory, and everything we do is completely logged and managed, and it's in the customer. That's one thing gives the customer so much confidence. There's no possibility of data leakage or anything like that. That's a huge part for the customer.
Excellent. All right.
On that note, I think we should really show them what we mean by that, what we mean by service.
That's
right?
a great idea.
So if you look at from a Google Cloud, look at it, what customer actually has to do is if you are, I'm on a Google Marketplace. If you're interested, you can actually see that in the Google Marketplace. And you go here, sorry, I clicked on Google and I'm just right there. All you have to do is, as long as you have the billing rights, you go and say subscribe, and it will automatically walk you through 3 screens. You just have to approve, and then automatically a dedicated service is delivered for every customer, right? That's the same thing with Azure. If you're not on Google, but are
why don't you say some more about that, Subbiah? When you said a dedicated service for each customer, what does that mean?
Absolutely. So what we try to do is that when a lot of people say, I have a cloud SaaS service, and actually, essentially all my database is actually one common big database because that's the way for the service web provider to actually make it cost efficient. We said, that's in the world of backup. We said the data is more important than our own thing. So we said for every customer, there should be no possibility of data leakage. So every customer gets a dedicated instance of HYCU. So they have their own data, they have their own data sets. It's in the customer's context, and everything done for the project is logged in the customer's access logs. And so that's what we mean. It's a true delivery for every customer, individual service for every customer.
Okay, great.
Azure, exactly same thing. It's right in the marketplace. A lot of times when we talk about our solutions, people think, oh, so as a service means you give me an AMI image and do I spin it up on the cloud? I said, that's not a true service. Ours is truly service. It's like in your iPhone backup, iCloud backup, right? You just turn it on and it works. That's exactly the model we have actually followed here. So that's something which we have done. So it goes back to not just subscribing for the service, even logging into the service, right? When you log into the service, you log in with your native Google credentials. And in this case, as you can see, I'm logging in with my Google Identity Management. And let me log into, in our case, we have actually tied the HYCU's credential into the Google Identity Management. And when I do it, you will see the infrastructure. As soon as I logged in, I didn't have to do anything special. It'll automatically come back with the right set of projects I have access to, and the right set.
So, you just jumped over something. I got to stop you there. So
Sure.
being natively integrated into the identity access management seems like a simple thing, right?
Yep.
But I'll tell you, there are so many other vendors in this space who will purport to have platform integration with a specific cloud. But when they go after a customer and they're sitting with their CISO and their security team, they're actually going through all the paces. When we sit with those security teams, they look at this service and they literally say, and this is a true story, one of the largest Fortune 50 companies in the world, sat us down with their CISO, and the CISO said, I've got nothing to do here. This is exactly the same as the way we've launched our cloud platform. Because you're so natively integrated, their security is your security. And I really think that's a key part of how we've been able to scale so fast. I don't know, Subbiah, if you agree.
Totally.
One of the things that strikes me as I've talked to you guys a number of times over the last year, and also as a part of this, is the simplicity angle. And I don't think that's something that I would want to leave people with, not with an incomplete story. And in fact, James and I were talking earlier about something he's working on. And one of the things I think people don't appreciate is that making something easy or look easy is actually really freaking hard. It takes a lot of engineering effort. It takes a lot of cycles, and it takes a lot of strategy to make something like that work. And as I was watching the demo, what struck me was you're not in the way. Like, you're basically part of the workflow that people are already used to. And it's not like I've got to go figure something else out. I just do what I've always done. And, I'm not trying to make this an advertisement for HYCU necessarily. Let's say, go buy it right now, although that'd be great. But what I'm trying to say is that's really hard to do, and you guys have done that. So congratulations there.
Well, thank you, Scott. And I can tell you a very quick, funny anecdote about that if you'd like. Our very first salesperson we hired, when Subbiah and Goran, who was our CTO, and myself were just launching the company, we hired this enterprise seller. And he came back and he said, well, I have a problem. I said, what's the problem? He says, well, it looks too simple. People actually, they try it and they say, well, it can't possibly do everything that all the other guys are doing because I deployed it in 12 minutes and it all works. So you obviously have left something out. And it has actually taken us quite some time to learn how to communicate that the complexity is behind the curtain. And now we simply say that.
Yeah.
We just joke that it's, think about artificial intelligence, right? It's all the complexities behind the curtain. The SLOs are what you have to mess with. And that's really where the beauty and elegance of the system comes to play.
A few products I've looked at over the past few years, not necessarily data protection, but where there are no what we would call, probably insultingly to some, nerd knobs, or there are few nerd knobs. It's things just, and when questioned, the answer is, why do you need them? I mean, a lot of times they're there just to give people this sense of control, when in fact it adds a lot of complexity, and it adds points of failure, and it adds points of support. When there's very little there's very little actual business benefit to having those knobs available.
It also adds an opportunity to do
right.
it wrong, right? When I was talking about having deployed something else, there were so many knobs, and I was not skilled enough to do it just right that it turned out worse than if there had been no knobs for me to turn.
Oh, yeah. I mean, my big analogy, James, is actually this. I always say, you remember those old 80s speakers? Subbiah's heard me say this a million times. They used to have 1,000 EQ knobs, right? And somebody would come over your house and, press them all down, and you'd have to spend 3 hours setting them up. Now you say jazz, Bose, on, and it all just sounds perfect because it's doing it itself. Nobody wants to go back to that, and I think one of the best compliments we've ever gotten, one of our clients that we love very much, he actually, did a podcast, and he said, it's the iPhone of backup. And we said, all right, that's good. And that's the level of simplicity you strive for. So thank you for noticing that.
Simon, I mean, that's the beauty of it. And the big thing, customers, if they ever want to verify what we are saying, right, all they have to go to is their Google console, and they will see every operation HYCU does is fully logged in their Google console. So just not from us, they can get the data. That's something there. In addition, a good thing, a big part of HYCU's philosophy is that all the data should belong with the customer. We never want ever a possibility of the data leakage. That's one of the reasons. What we have actually done is that all of the data is always with the customer. And that is something we have made sure the design is built like that. That's the second thing. The third thing, which I want to say, what's special about our as a service platform compared to many of the traditional guys who have ported their existing on-prem onto the cloud, right? A big thing is a customer can start with one virtual machine, can go to thousands of virtual machines, and spin it down to 500, again go to 1,000, not a problem. Every day they can keep changing it, and you don't have to do any sizing exercise or new deployment exercise on HYCU. HYCU spins up and spins down like a true cloud native service. That's a fundamental architectural design, and that is something we have been able to do because we built a ground up for the cloud. Cool. So we talked about the cloud here. I mean, same thing which I showed you on the Google Cloud, same thing on the Microsoft Azure. I just want to demonstrate to people that you can actually do that also from the Microsoft Azure cloud, right? And while it's coming up, the key things I wanted to actually show you is you're actually going to see the Microsoft Azure cloud. It is connecting live to one of our instances there, and you are actually seeing the virtual machines and data which we are actually protecting for the customer. The thing which we do here is that we make sure for the customer, we make sure that all of your data is in the native cloud's backup repository. That is something we do. And the reason is that otherwise we don't want you to have to pay any extra egress charges. That's something, so we are very cost conscious. And the thing is that we can make sure your data is always on the cheapest tier of storage which the local cloud provides. Those are things which we have built into the solution. A thing which I showed you, protect the data on the cloud, on-prem, protect data on the cloud, and also going to the cloud. Now, one of the questions many of you probably happen is, what happens if I want to bring down from the cloud, right? This is a classic thing which we hear from customers, especially in people in the federal space, in the financial and the healthcare, where they develop on the cloud, but they run it on-prem. So for them, it's as simple as we always call one click. I should probably say one selection. Here, again, it's very simple. Right from my UI, I'm just going to say, I'm sitting on an on-prem infrastructure right now. I'm going to say, let me connect to the project I actually have, service I actually have. I'm connecting. I'm looking at my sandbox. I will look at the machines I actually have. All I have to do is select the machine, click next, and say which controller I want to bring the data to. That's it. As soon as you do that, it'll bring the infrastructure down for you, ready to consume here. That's the level of simplicity which we have actually built in. And the thing here is that everything here can be done in self-service mode. You can create different user groups and different people can have different privileges. That way you can say a DBA who wants to develop on-prem and wants to have a test infrastructure on the cloud, no big deal. You can actually set it up. That way they have the permissions on the machines or applications they own. They can spin up anytime, spin down anytime, and can have the flexibility they desire.
So thank you so much. That was such a great, I always love watching you work because, seeing the way you demonstrate the value, I think there's just nothing like that. At this point, I'm sure you guys have some questions around our go-to-market strategy. When I think about, all of the things that we've just talked about, going all the way from our origin as the Nutanix purpose-built backup and recovery for Nutanix, all the way through on-prem, all the way through public cloud, then with the addition of Protégé, there's a lot here. I think a lot of people sort of ask us, how did we get the level of growth that we get, that customer adoption so quickly? And a couple of things. I think, again, having a 91 NPS score was critical for us. It's great to acquire new customers. It's wonderful to sell to the same customer 10, 11 times. The second piece is we have paid very careful attention to our partners. We are 100% partner-led here at HYCU. When I talk about partners, I'm going to break it down into a couple of different categories. The first is our strategic technology partners. So the platforms we support, whether it's Nutanix, whether it's in Azure with Microsoft, or whether it's Google with GCP, we're always very, very considerate of that partner. And what do I mean by considerate? We spend a lot of time understanding what their challenges are and then working with them to overcome them. So, a great example of this is Google called us up recently and said, SAP HANA is a big challenge for us. We want to make it easy for customers who are running SAP to very quickly move to GCP. We said, no problem, and we were integrated with backend, and we now are, one of the dominant players in the SAP for GCP space. So I think things like that, where we are actually able to use our development capabilities and our strategy as a business to help these, large platforms to succeed in their own businesses. I think that's been crucial for us, really, in helping us to grow as fast as we can and really scale. I don't know, Subbiah, do you have any comments on that as well?
Absolutely, Simon. I mean, the key thing is that our focus has always been to work with a partner, work with the latest technology. That's one of the reasons, be it Nutanix or be it Google or be it Azure, if you look at it, being on par with a platform, right? That's why when we talk about purpose-built, we mean it's just not making it the UI pretty and looking at this one. It's the same terminology, same look and feel, integration into the platform, and integration working with them on the latest innovation as they come across. Customers will see more and more as time progresses from us.
Thank you, Subbiah. And I think the last point that we'd like to make here, a lot of people say, okay, so you've got 1,300 customers in just a couple of years, scaled very fast in a lot of different countries. What are the market segments you're really seeing a tremendous amount of growth in? And I think I would break it down kind of by platform. Again, we mirror the platforms we support. Where Nutanix goes, we go. Where Google's going, we go. At Microsoft, the same. And I think that's really been kind of the secret sauce to our success, is that really close partnering. But I will say that in the Fed and SLED and the sort of public sector arena, we've done tremendously well. I mean, we've seen 365% year-over-year growth in Fed. We are seeing tremendous collaborations across the world, not just with US Fed, but also with other countries as well. And I think that's been terrific for us. It's been great to see the scale of those implementations and the way that we've been able to scale directly with their needs. And again, I think that only happens because we're so natively integrated into each one of those platforms. Frankly, if you had to build a platform to support a platform, you've got a lot of cost challenges, you've got a lot of issues. And unfortunately, I think that's the approach a lot of others have taken. We believe that they are the platform. And that what we support is the confluence of those platforms so that we can provide higher levels of value at a lower cost. And I think that's worked tremendously well for us. So Subbiah, any last thoughts for us?
So I'm a customer. I understand I can go to the Google Marketplace and click a button and buy it. How are you licensed? Otherwise, I mean, I understand that there's, it's paid for via Google in that instance, but on premises, Azure, other places. How are you licensed, and how do I acquire HYCU?
Sure. So really, we follow a channel model almost everywhere we go. So we're very, very channel focused. I would say almost every deal that we do at this point is through the channel. We started, as we said, sort of mirroring the platform, but we've shifted tremendously towards subscription to make sure that our business is aligned with the needs of the marketplace. So very simple, you can give us a call, and any of our enterprise sellers worldwide will work with your traditional distributor or channel reseller to provide subscription licenses for you. So if it's on-prem, we're going to do that via socket or via VM on a per VM basis. Okay. If it is a Protégé license, it's going to be subscription per VM. And if it's in the cloud, it can be either returns or it's going to be consumption based. So really, again, we try to make this as simple as possible. We don't believe that the insurance should be more complicated than buying the car, right? So if you're storing your data with a platform, we really want you to be able to get your backup in a frictionless manner that's going to be as easy to deploy as it is to pay for. And I think we do a really strong job in that area.
Great, thank you.
All right, I think we have one parting comment here from Subbiah, and
before we break, I know we're probably over time here, and these folks are probably getting sick of us using up all their studio time. Any last thoughts?
I just want to add one last thing to what you said earlier. It's our goal is to make it data protection as an invisible service of the platform. It summarizes exactly what you are trying to get to. So absolutely.
Very well said. Very well said. Well, thank you all for having us on today. It's been a terrific pleasure. Thank you for the great questions. We really enjoyed answering them. And we hope to see you again soon. Thank you and take care.
Well, that was awesome. Thank you guys for doing that with us. And this has been fun. Scott, any final thoughts or questions before we wrap it up?
No, this was great. Fantastic. Thank you for participating. Thank you to everybody for watching. And it's always great to learn more. And we're trying to take the place of the user here and ask some of the basic questions. You guys did a great job, so thank you.
It's been our pleasure. Thank you for having us on.
Thank you.